Hello YouTube, back once again with my film reviews, and today I'll be counting down what I thought were the top 10 movies of 2015, before I get down to my top 10, there's a few movies I want to give some mention to, some honorable mentions, and some other things I want to mention about films this year. First let me just say this year as a whole, I thought this was a pretty bad year for film on the most part. When I was running down every movie I saw was making the top 10, and I just kind of realized, my bottom four spots were kind of every honorable mention was kind of I could have easily I think I swapped this with another movie, on my honorable mentions, it at least show that it's only when it's only my start with my sixth favorite film of the year that I start feeling passionate about the film. But before I get into that, let me first just give some honorable mentions. Not honorable mentions. First, let me just say, what was the worst movie I saw this year? For the worst movie I thought that was made in 2015 that I saw, at least, I definitely gotta give it to Fantastic Four. Now, say what you want, there were technically worse movies this year, with movies like 50 Shades of Grey, which I could not. It was on HBO one day. I couldn't even sit through 10 minutes of it. But you know what? 50 Shades of Grey is based off one of the shittiest books ever written. Just most god-awful books known to man. It had all reasons to be an awful movie. What was this movie's excuse? Besides just the director and Fox clearly not getting along with this one. Yeah, Fantastic Four, I definitely thought was the worst movie this year. Then I thought the most disappointing movie of this year was definitely had to be the new David O. Russell film, Joy. I mean, it was a new David O. Russell movie starring Jennifer Lawrence, Robert De Niro, and Bradley Cooper. How could this go wrong? And it went wrong, this movie. And it's so sad because, my God, these past few years, American Hustle, Silver Linings Playbook, they were some of my favorite movies of those years. But, God, such a shame, pity this was a mess of a film. So, yeah, I thought that was the most disappointing movie of 2015. And before we get to the top 10, here are the honorable mentions of 2015, the movies that almost hit the list that I had very much considered for it. I have to say Creed. Even though it basically had the same issues as Star Wars Episode 7, which it was a sequel reboot that really just felt like a remake of the original with different characters, it was still just like Star Wars Episode 7. It still captured the initial charm of the original movie, and I thought it was a great sports movie. Usually I don't like sports movies. I thought Creed was great. Great acting, great performance especially from Sylvester Stallone. And that first boxing match scene, just how it's made to look like one long continuous shot, that was just incredible. So Creed, great sports movie. The Gift, fantastic. Writing and directorial debut for star Joel Edgerton. One of the definitely one of the more effective horror movies I saw this year. God, just a really, really unsettling movie, that one, and God, had two of the most effective jump scares I've ever seen in my life, and also one of Jason Bateman's hands down one of the best performances of his career, Jason Bateman, and if only I wasn't able to guess the plot. Mission Impossible, Rogue Nation, another great action Mission Impossible movie. Those movies, in my opinion, just keep getting better and better. Tons of fun, tons of great action. It was another Mission Impossible movie. I had a blast watching it. Inside Out, the new Pixar movie. Even though I did not completely love this movie the same way a lot of people did, I still thought it was a great animated movie. Great visuals, some really likable characters, really good message at the end. Definitely Pixar's best in years. Inside Out, great animated film. Unfriended, I know this was a very polarizing movie this year. Some people thought it was complete shit. Some people thought it wasn't very scary, but at least they at least made it feel realistic. And some people just thought it was a legitimately good horror movie. I was one of those people who just thought it was a legitimately good horror movie. And for the fact, I thought it was just a very well made movie, just how they did make it look like it was just during one continuous Skype session, and And I love the fact that the ghost like had, what a dark, twisted sense of humor they had, and there's that. And yeah, definitely the best found footage movie I've seen in years. Even if you don't like this movie, it's definitely cut above your average found footage film. Yeah, Unfriended. Grandma, I'm sure a lot of you have not seen this movie. This was an indie comedy from earlier this year, and it was, even though it was not a very consistent comedy, when it was funny, it was completely hysterical, with the lead actress just giving a knockout performance as the just completely insane grandmother. Definitely worth a watch if you can ever manage to see it. Brooklyn, one of the most charming, probably the most charming movie I saw this year. Probably Saoirse Ronan's all-time best performance at the moment. I love that actress. She's a great up and coming actress. Yeah, just a just an incredibly charming movie. Tons of charming actors, just wonderful cinematography from beginning to end. Definitely gave you a feel for almost like an imagine for a 1950s New York. Just wonderful from beginning to end. What a charming little film Brooklyn was. Kingsman, The Secret Service. I know a lot of people, some people say it's too stupid, it's too violent, it's just way too over the top to take seriously. All I can say about that is Kingsman was awesome, and I loved sitting through that. So Kingsman, that's a great one. Trainwreck, the new movie from Amy Schumer, definitely a great highlight of all her comedic talent. So many great lines, and yeah, just what a wonderful showcase for Amy Schumer. What a wonderful comedian she is. Definitely glad this launched her career more into the mainstream. So yeah, What We Do in the Shadows. I'm sure a lot of people have not seen this one. This was an indie mockumentary about a group of vampires who live in the flat, and God, is this movie funny. It's kind of like this is Spinal Tap, in which it's about something a lifestyle you assume would be kind of cool, but they just made it look like the lamest thing ever. And this movie is just has so many great lines from beginning to end, and yeah, just a lot of great moments. This definitely this is Spinal Tap, and a lot of good mockumentaries. This is a movie that deserves to be, you have to kind of watch a few times to get all the jokes of it. So yeah, What We Do in the Shadows, really funny movie. And finally, The Revenant. Even though I thought it stretched on a bit too long, I can't deny this was by far the most visually beautiful film I saw this year. Had some incredibly brutal action, and DiCaprio was probably one of his all-time best. Yeah, just The Revenant. Even though I thought it stretched out too long, still a great movie. And so yeah, that's my honorable mentions. Now let's get down to the top 10. What were the 10 best movies of 2015 for me? Okay, let's start. Okay, well, number 10 goes to Star Wars Episode 7, The Force Awakens. Now, I've never been the hugest of Star Wars fans. I do think they're great movies, but I've never been an uber fan by any way, in any way. But this movie, it really came down between this or Creed for what I wanted to put at my top, what I was going to put on my number 10, and I gave it to Star Wars just because Star Wars had more riding against it. Like, if Creed wasn't good, I highly doubt that many people would care. It's the fact if this movie wasn't very good, it would be deemed one of the worst movies ever made. So, yeah, but no, lived up to people's hopes that would be a good movie, had some fantastic characters, fantastic acting, there's tons of fun action sequences, and just had such a great adventurous feel to it. So, yeah, Star Wars Episode 7. Great new start great start for the new Star Wars movies. Now, hopefully, they'll make up their own plots going forward from here. Number 9 has to go to It Follows, my favorite horror movie of 2015. Definitely one more clever ideas for a horror movie. Of an ST demon chasing you around. This movie just had such a great idea for a horror movie. Definitely when you leave the theater, when I left the theater at least, when I saw someone walking towards me in my direction, it definitely made me feel a bit afraid. So definitely a great movie if you want to feel paranoid. It Follows. One of the more clever horror movies I've seen this year. Number 8 has to go to Spy. I thought this was actually one of the more underrated movies of 2015. I thought this movie was just a hysterical comedy from beginning to end. I'm not sure most people just want to write it off because it was Melissa McCarthy just doing her her like fat loser woman thing, but like no, because it's different than that. Because in this movie, she's actually a very confident. Like I like this a lot more than what she usually does. Because in this movie, she's a very competent spy. In this movie, it feels like all the aliases given like feels like it would be one of the shitty comedies she would do. But no, like this movie is just I thought was incredibly funny from beginning to end. From beginning to end. Oh god, just the spy who just has all the stories on like of all the things he's seen and done. Like I have seen the woman I love get pushed out of an airplane and then get hit by another airplane in midair. That's one of the funniest scenes I saw in cinema this year. So Spy. Spy. I thought this was a very underrated comedy. I thought this was great. And number 7, The Hateful Eight. And I do have to chalk this up. This goes to if you get the viewing experience of the 70mm film. Just if you going to that, just seeing it, not getting trailers, only having an overture, having an intermission in between the movie. It definitely boosted this movie in my mind. Thought it made it better, but besides that, it was still a very good Tarantino movie. Still had incredibly brutal action. Still had some of, I think, honestly, some of his all-time best character work. Tarantino. I feel and that's these are some of his all-time best characters in this movie. Samuel Jackson was just hysterical in this movie, especially his monologue halfway through the film. Oh god, that was definitely one of the funniest scenes I saw in cinema this year. I think that would be the funniest scene I saw in cinema this year. Definitely it was one of the funniest Tarantino all-time best. Most hysterical Tarantino moments, and Hateful Eight. Even though I know everyone was able to I was kind of swayed by people pointing out the giant plot hole about near the ending. I'm like, yeah, you're right, but I still, with that experience, like, of getting like that, like, you're truly watching a movie from decades ago, definitely boosted this movie for me. So, The Hateful Eight, number 7. Now, going from here, these are the movies I do truly thought were actually the better movies of the year. So, number 6 goes to Ex Machina. One of the best movies about the philosophical debates about artificial intelligence and what's a soul and what's a person, a thinking mind. Had one of the best crazy scientist characters of one of the best scientist characters of all time with Oscar Isaac. Had a knockout performance from definitely I'm glad this has been launching a career from Alicia Vikander as the robot Ava. Definitely just so many great memorable conversations, and remember that if you want to have good philosophical debates, you should have people talking about these philosophical debates, not just just monotone voices just saying all these philosophical things. And this movie had one of the all-time best dance scenes in all of cinematic history, in my opinion. So, Ex Machina. How unfortunate, though, it had to be tied around such a predictable plot. If the plot was a little less standard, this could have honestly been one of my favorite sci-fi of the year, film of the year. But that honor for my favorite sci-fi film of the year goes to number 5, The Martian. Definitely my surprise hit of the year, because I heard a lot of people were getting excited for this movie. I never read the book. I just didn't really care. I was like, okay, but then I saw it. I thought it was fantastic. This was truly adult sci-fi. This movie. Matt Damon gave one of his all-time best performances. Concerning a lot of the movie, he has to act against nothing. It's him and nobody. It's only him and nobody else. The visual effects were great. Every single story, the 3 stories, usually when you get a 3-story plot, there's usually one story you always dread to cut back to. I cared about all 3 of the stories watching this film. I do not feel there was any side character that wasn't memorable. Every single actor was memorable. I applaud this movie for not being a villain, for not having a villain. It actually treated its audiences more like adults by there being no villain to this film. It was just people in a crappy situation, and And yeah, oh god, and the true surprising thing about this film is just how funny this movie was. Just a movie about a man stranded on Mars. Just how funny this, how many good lines there was to this film. Just is was truly amazing. I don't know if I call the movie comedy though, the Golden Globes did, but. It was definitely a lot. It was definitely way funnier than I ever thought it would be walking into it. And yeah, The Martian, great. In my opinion, the best sci-fi movie of the year. So that's my number 5. Now number 4 goes to Me and Earl and the Dying Girl, another movie I'm sure a lot of you have not seen. I thought this was a fantastic movie, though. I thought this movie, in my opinion, was the most realistic depictions of how teenagers react to tragedy, for the most part, which, for the most part, we try to somewhat ignore tragedy when it faces it, or just try to not deny it exists and just get angry when people try to throw it in front of our faces. For a movie called Me and Earl and the Dying Girl, this was one of the funniest movies I saw this year, which was so shocking. Wonderful performances from its young cast. Just so many great lines. You truly bond to the friendship. This had one of my favorite romances I've ever seen for a young adult coming of age story. For the fact there really is no romance in this movie. So much, and it felt like these were teenagers talking about this conversation. It's not like a movie like The Fault in Our Stars, when it was clearly not teenagers, just like someone's thoughts about what a teenager says in this situation. No, this felt like real teenagers talking about these really big issues. So, yeah, Me and Earl and the Dying Girl, and it's just amazing that this movie, even during its saddest moments, it can still get a laugh out of you. So, yeah, Me and Earl and the Dying Girl. That's my number 4 pick of the year. And number 3 goes to here we are with the top 3, and number 3 goes to Mad Max Fury Road. What can I say about this movie that everyone has not said yet about this film? This film was just an adrenaline rush like no other. It was just kicked ass from beginning to end. It had what Charlize Theron and whatever all-time best performances. Just the action, just so much practical effects, so many fantastic shots. Some very likable characters, which was very surprising, and a very good villain for the most part. And definitely a movie that threw you into a world. I distinctly remember watching when I watched this with my friend for the first time. We had never seen a Mad Max movie before this. When just the movie began and we just saw the car chase starting and then the movie was 20 minutes and we just kind of stared at each other is this the entire movie, just one long car chase? And yes, it was, but my god, was it an amazing car chase. So, Mad Max Fury Road, if the character of Max was only slightly more interesting, I would have said this was a perfect movie, but even without Max, this not being a perfect movie, this was one of the best movies I saw this year. And yeah, how did Honest trailers, they I liked how they put it. They were if you ever watched their Honest trailer for it, they're this story of a woman who will rise against her oppressive warlord, who frees his prisoners because they refuse to be his slaves. And then there's a guy named Max in the movie. He does stuff sometimes. That's how I felt. But besides that, this was just hands down one of the best action movies I saw in my whole life. Honestly, I can't think of many better action movies than this. So, Mad Max Fury Road, freaking amazing movie. That's my number 3 pick. Number 2, this goes to The Big Short, and God, for a movie about one of the darkest parts of recent U.S. history, this was one of the funniest movies I saw this year. This is definitely, I would say, this was the best comedy I saw this year. Just the fact that they were able just to inject so much humor in this such a dark concept. The story of 3 groups of people who realized that the housing market was built on basically fraud and realized it was all going to come crashing down. And Yeah, this movie was just so freaking funny for me to end. There was so many memorable, almost every scene was memorable in its own way, and you could talk about, and it was worth talking about. How one of the best ensemble casts I have ever seen in a movie. Without, well, probably Steve Carell, I would say is probably his best comedic performance. Just being like he was being funny, but he wasn't like someone who was like he was actually a very intelligent person who was just what he was saying, just how blatant he was. It was just hysterical watching this guy. Ryan Gosling was fantastic. Christian Bale was wonderful. Brad Pitt was great. Yeah, so was Finn Wittrock and the guy who played his partner. Though this was what can I say? This movie was just go watch it. It is so funny, and the fact that they were so able, how well they were able to explain the ins and out of how this scam work is just amazing. Is just amazing. Much more. I found this so much easier to follow than I did Joy, a movie about woman in business. I found harder to follow than this movie about just about one of the most epic scams in American history. And yeah, The Big Short, definitely worth a watch. And finally, my number one movie of 2015 goes to Room. This movie was so many things to me at once. This film was able to be it brought me so many different emotions. It brought me terror. It brought me hope. It brought me joy. It brought me to tears. It was just it's definitely the closest a film has ever brought me to legitimately crying. This movie is just the story. This is by no means an easy watch of a movie. With the premise of it's about a woman who was abducted 7 years ago and thrown into a man's garden shed, and now it's 7 years later, and she's trying to and she has convinced her 5-year-old son that the entire world and everything that exists is just in this one room is just amazing. The fact of just the cinematography to this movie was amazing. Just how big they made this one room look, like how many different parts they managed to pull, out this one garden shed of a room. There was that. Brie Larson. This was one of the best performances. Like, this was the best performance I saw of the year. Just how many goddamn emotions this woman had to convey throughout the course of this film. Like, it was honestly her. It was her strength and this boy's Jacob Tremblay's hope that really brought you through a horrible situation this was. And this movie, even though I knew these people escaped in this movie because the trailer says that, the escape sequence, that is, honestly, in my opinion, one of the best scenes in cinematic history. That was one of the most intense things I have ever seen in my life. Even though I knew they get out, the escape plan works, I was still so white-knuckling it from beginning to end. And, just to show how much emotion this movie was, how many different emotions this movie could convey at once, I would just say, just watch the escape scene. Just the fact that this scene is terrifying, it's intense, and it's also uplifting and wondrous for the fact, like, when this kid first sees the outside world for the first time is just amazing. And Brie Larson, if she does not walk away with Best Actress, I'm gonna be really angry from the Academy. So those were my top 10 movies of 2015. Just to go through the list one more time: number 10, Star Wars Episode 7; number 9, It Follows; number 8, Spy; number 7, The Hateful Eight; number 5, The Martian; number 4, Me and Earl, the Dying Girl; number 3, Mad Max Fury Road; number 2 being The Big Short; number 1 being Room. Not the best year for film, but Mike, I would do, I think, the top 5 for me. Those were some of the best films of their genre. So even though it was a consistent great year for film, there were some true gems of this year. And so that was 2015. Here's to hoping 2016 is just as good, if not better, than 2015. YouTube, as always, please subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Okay, bye.